Hello, inmates, and welcome to the Cellblock Scorch Week 16. This is Bones, and I'm recording as the winner of this week's Scorch. This week's prompt was given by Peishi, and it was, Field trip to the zoo brings unforeseen consequences. Okay, so I'm gonna throw back to episode 6 for a sec. You know, the one where Peishi wrote about that fairy tale fanfiction and talked about how I'm to blame for everything that led up to this moment. So I'm going to do what I promised when I broke into that episode and give you all a little bit more information on that. As Peishi mentioned, we met in college, but Cricket and I knew each other from way before that. So one day, I'm sitting on my bed trying to write a paper, and Peishi and Cricket are on Cricket's side of the room chatting, right? And I'm mostly just listening and pretending to write. But then they're talking about media that they like, and Cricket brings up Studio Ghibli. Might I remind you that she said she had never watched anime before, and I already knew, based on previous discussions, that she thought negatively about it, just like everyone else. Me watching anime was like an open secret that everyone just decided not to mention. But then Cricket talks about Studio Ghibli, and I already wasn't writing my paper, but gosh dang, when I tell you my brain just went to static. And then I spent the next 10 minutes, I kid you not, listening to these two talk about how beautiful Studio Ghibli is and trying to reconcile Cricket, who I knew didn't like anime, and Peishi, who definitely had that vibe as well. And just like thinking over and over, do I say something? If I say something, will they lose all respect for me? Because guys, high school was not kind to people who liked anime. Friendships were strained by recognizing a character, even if you insisted you didn't watch the show. So I'm having a slow motion breakdown while furiously pretending to write a paper, and I've just decided not to bring up the fact that I watch anime when Cricket says, "It's so beautiful, I just wish there was more in this art style." And I'm like, okay, that's the last straw. I can't not when she actually asked, even if she didn't know I had the answer. So I steel myself and I look up and I say, "You mean anime?" And I cannot describe the looks those two gave me, dudes. Absolutely repulsed. And Cricket goes, "No, Studio Ghibli." And I go, yeah, that's anime. Because I'm already digging a social grave, might as well keep going. And they're both looking at me like, that's hella sus. And they don't believe me until I literally Googled anime and showed them the Google results. At which point they backed off completely and were like, And I had to bargain, inmates. I was like, okay guys, I get to choose one show, one episode of one anime. Sit with me, watch it, and if you don't like it, I swear I will never mention it again. And I know my friends, so I chose Fairy Tail. I dragged them kicking and screaming to the first episode. And then, that night, we watched at least 3, because at the end of it, they'd been convinced. And the rest is history. They like anime now. We all proceeded to go absolutely bonkers, self-inserts and fanfiction writing included. The whole putting ourselves in stories is like a thing that we do, and because for once, something isn't directly my fault, I'm going to hand some time over to Peishi to explain herself.
Okay, so, as you all know by now, me and Cricket and Bones, right, we were living together when we started the Scorch. And Bones introduced us to anime, right? We all started off with Fairy Tail. And then we all watched, I think second was Death Note, because Bones is a vindictive little gremlin who thrives on schadenfreude and making people suffer. So we all watched Death Note. And then I think the third one that we all watched together, well, Fairy Tail was ongoing. We would watch these like shorter ones in between arcs, I think. But the third one would have been Ouran High School Host Club. And if you are unfamiliar with anime, that is a reverse harem anime and kind of one of the poster children of that genre, right? And so a reverse harem, the concept is that you have a female protagonist, right? It's reverse harem because the harem anime, right, would be with the male protagonist and a bunch of females that they're like, that are into him, and, you know, he has to pick between them. So the reverse harem is kind of that concept with a female protagonist, and then we've got a whole bunch of male characters who are varying stages of being in love with her. And they all have different personalities, and it's quite fun. It's not really a concept you see too much in Western media, right? So it was very new to me when I first watched Oron. I was delighted by it as a concept. And of course, one of the questions that naturally comes up when you're watching a show like that in a group is like, well, who would you pick? And for Oron, it was actually a twofold question: was whose table would you sit at, and who would you actually want to be with, right? These were separate questions for some of us. Anyway, I asked that question, right? And we all picked somebody in the Oron High School Host Club that we thought we would vibe with best, right? But then, now that I had opened that door, I started thinking about it in context of every anime that we watched. And it's been so many years now that I end up at least thinking about this with every piece of media that I consume, because I've corrupted myself so thoroughly. But it was just kind of a thing that we started doing with anime, was we would watch the anime together and we would be like, okay, but who, if I lived in this universe and I had a character here, which character would my character go for? And it was just this kind of, funny, creative thing that we did, right? And we started to keep track of it, and there started to be more of us doing it. And so we came up with kind of rules where, like, we couldn't pick the same person, and we couldn't pick somebody who already had a ship, and just varying little things like that. And some of us like to break these rules, and some of us like to steal people that we know that other people will like, and, it's just a fun, interactive little thing that we do. And it's actually called, we have a spreadsheet where we keep track of it that is called the virus list. And that is because this was referred to as something that I infected the people with, right? It's my virus. Just like anime is the thing that Bones infected us with, and me and Lost are responsible for getting the group into K-pop, and, varying things that we like to make fun of each other for. And back in the day, we all used to put, I feel like, a lot more effort into actually making the OC and a storyline. I feel like I've gotten a lot more lax with that, especially as the years have gone by, where I'll just watch an anime and I'll be like, that one would be mine, and move on without, Back in the day, we would come up with names and how they met and all kinds of stuff, which we don't really do as much anymore. Anyway, we're just, creative, funny people, so we do ridiculous things because we're crazy. But I actually wanted to go ahead and, since this is a very exposing thing for some of the members of this group, I wanted to go ahead and mention the people who are not on the virus list, who do not participate in playing this game with us, just so that their names can be cleared, so to speak. So the people who are not on this list are Safety Matches and Grishmak. Everybody else has at least one person on this list. And I'll go ahead and expose the person who has the most, just because I think it's funny. And we all love to direct vicious mockery at each other. So the person who has the most has 113 viruses on this list, right? I said virus is the name of the list because I am the virus, but we have also just taken to calling all of the various random spouses on this list viruses. Anyway, the winner has 113 viruses on this list, and that is Bones. Of course. Anyway, that's all I have to say for this comment.
Okay, some comments about the comments before I talk about my Scorch. Also, on the Patreon, you can sort by tags, right? So everything where some or all of the characters were inspired by members of Stellacore is going to be tagged Stellacore AU. And some of them are fanfiction, but a lot of them are also just original works that just use us as character models. And it's very fun. Also, I want to clarify that the reason I have the most virus people is because I have watched the most shows. I started several years before everyone else. And the reason that Peishi finds it so funny is that I am also Arrow Ace and probably the least invested in romance and relationships overall. But look, characters are rad, and I will be collecting the best ones. They will be mine. So yeah, that's my defense. Anyway, back to my Scorch. So yeah, this brings me to the Scorch, which is, again, over the 3,000 word limit. And it's an Oron High School host club fanfiction in which, on top of that, 5 of us Scorchers, Bones, Peishi, Cricket, Octo, and Lost, are inserted as characters. I'm actually really proud of how it turned out because each of them have read it and they all said I did a great job characterizing them, which was honestly the scariest part of writing this, was totally offending someone. But one more thing, I wrote this back when I was using she, her pronouns, and I've decided to keep it for this reading just because I think it's fun that you don't know which one is me right off the bat, because I'm the only one with different pronouns. So all 5 of the insert characters are she, hers. Oh, and unlike Peishi, I have the audacity to attempt character voices here, so this is my preemptive formal apology to the professional voice actors for these characters. Alright, the name of this Scorch is Unforeseen Zoo Consequences. Why am I here? Haruhi's dejected voice floated up from the back of the group, where she was currently being hauled over one of Mori's massive shoulders like a sack of potatoes. You can let me down, I won't try to escape again. She wouldn't have tried to escape the first time if she had known the seniors were there, actually, because she knew it was impossible. With just Kyoya, Tamaki, and the twins, she thought maybe it was possible, but Mori was another matter. My dear Haruhi, Tamaki sparkled, twirling to face her as Mori set her down without a word. Honey immediately climbed onto Mori's shoulders in her place. I've heard many tales of what commoner families do together in their free time, and one we needed to experience was the zoo, a place of joy and cute animals. It's a staple of the family's happiness. Don't you want to be a happy family, daughter? Please don't touch me, senpai, Haruhi deadpanned, not seeming all too perturbed at how close he was to her face. When she saw that he was safely in his depression corner, at this point too common of an occurrence to make her feel even the slightest twinge of guilt, she returned to the other second year, silently asking for an explanation. Daddy over there was watching TV dramas again, Kyoya informed her plainly, giving the blonde a look so cold that if Tamaki wasn't currently wallowing in despair, he probably would have color-faulted. He didn't want to be here either, she knew, because they had woke him up for this escapade. Come on, Haruhi, Hikaru smirked, plopping a hand on her shoulder. It'll be fun, Kaoru grinned, placing his hand on her other shoulder. What are you two planning? She asked suspiciously, and the 2 redheads immediately laughed. Who, us? We would never, they agreed in tandem, pulling her into a crushing hug between them. I don't think... Haruhi couldn't finish her thought, though, because at that moment Tamaki, who seemed to have come across some renewed vigor, as he unfortunately always did, flew by and grabbed her from them. Stay away from my daughter, you shady twins! He shrieked, rocketing off towards the zoo's entrance with the unfortunate Haruhi in tow. Who's shady? The twins demanded, lunging off after them. Hey, wait for us, Tama-chan! Honey called, and Mori set off catching up. Kyoya let out a disparaging sigh and walked calmly after. It had taken the group 10 minutes to get their tickets and gain entrance to the park. This was partially because, as Haruhi already knew, they were a bunch of rich idiots who didn't know how the world worked. Mostly, though, it was because of the hordes of girls that kept stopping them to talk. Honestly, Haruhi was pretty sure that half the guests in the zoo that day were girls who had followed the host club in. Even their civilian clothes, as Haruhi had heard Tamaki referred to them before, were ludicrously chic designer clothes. And they were very out of place in the zoo they had picked. They would have been out of place in any normal zoo, of course, but this one especially. Everyone, or at least everyone with common sense, knows that city zoos are less than stellar. And yet... there they were in their designer clothes, standing at the entrance of the most pathetic zoo Haruhi had ever seen. Kyoya seemed well aware of just how subpar the zoo was, even for commoners. Hikaru and Kaoru were making comments like they thought every commoner zoo looked like this, but Honey and Tamaki seemed much too thrilled to even notice the honestly pitiful state of the place. Mori didn't seem to mind one way or another. He was too busy ferrying Honey to every ridiculously overpriced sweet stand in the vicinity. Haruhi, look! Aren't they cute? Tamaki grinned, practically smashing himself up against the chain-link fence between the outside and a sparse enclosure consisting of a single tree and some shrubs. In the tree, in clear sight because despite it being a time of year wherein plants flourished, this tree was looking half dead, sat a blonde-furred monkey and a smaller brown-furred monkey. Haruhi regarded the flat-faced monkeys with clear uncaring. They didn't seem so cute to her, but if she said that, all that would happen would be Tamaki flipping out in public. Again. Before she opened her mouth to glibly agree, however, the blonde one suddenly opened its mouth and let out one of the loudest shrieking noises Haruhi had ever heard, and she was sent stumbling back in shock. Before she could lose her balance, however, she ran into something solid, and when she looked up, she saw Honey's brilliant smile radiating down from Mori's shoulders. She could have sworn they were across the park chasing cotton candy by now, but apparently not.
Good catch, Takashi!
Honey cheered. Thanks, Mori-senpai, Haruhi smiled, and Mori took a moment to nod at her before Honey once again directed him away, this time to the churro stand. Haruhi, are you all right? Tamaki howled, leaping at her and latching onto her in a hug. Don't worry, it can't hurt you. Daddy will protect you. Let go of me, Haruhi struggled, and got free after a moment. It looked like he was going to pounce again at any moment, so she had to come up with some sort of distraction. Her eyes landed on the blonde monkey once more. It was now swinging up and down the sad little tree like it was on a sugar high. It kind of reminds me of you, senpai. Loud and erratic. Had Haruhi bothered to look over at that moment, she may have seen the sparkles floating around the blonde king's head. But she had been distracted by Hikaru and Kaoru. The twins had bought an entire tub of Dippin' Dots ice cream and seemed to be readying to pour the entire thing into the alligator pit. Kyoya, who was standing nearby, pretending not to notice, he had to have noticed, though. He noticed everything. Didn't seem inclined to do anything about it. Hikaru, Kaoru, don't do that. Do you want to get us kicked out? She called, more exasperated than anything else. Kyoya-senpai, shouldn't you be doing something about this? Kyoya, who had been diligently taking notes in that black book of his, seriously, what was in there? Looked up and pushed his glasses up. Haruhi nearly took a step back at the utterly uncaring look on his face. It was almost like that time he'd been abandoned at the commoner's market, and she knew he felt like this all the time, but seeing him without that fake smile was always disconcerting. He didn't have any rich guests to entertain here, though, so she supposed he wouldn't put much effort into it. Why would I do that? If anything happens, we can just get them new alligators. And by we, I just mean the Hitachins, of course. Haruhi's sweat dropped. No matter how many times it came up, she was always surprised at the sheer richness of these idiots. Rich bastards, she muttered under her breath, turning to stop the twins from doing anything that would get her in trouble. They could pay their way out of anything they wanted, but as Haruhi was reminded pretty much every day, some mere mortals such as herself weren't so lucky. But they were no longer where they had been. Their gallon of ice cream was left on the edge of the pit, but neither redhead was anywhere to be seen. Kyoya-senpai? Haruhi turned back to the Shadow King, only to step back in wary surprise. He was smiling. A pleasant smile. As in full host mode. She thought it was creepy. This is the saddest zoo in the existence of ever, Aiko observed without much care as the group of 5 wandered through the zoo. They've got some really cute animals, though, Akahana rebutted, trying to look on the positive side of things. I liked the marmosets, Sakura agreed, cooing at the thought of the adorable little monkeys. You would, Aiko responded once again without much feeling, eliciting an offended noise from the brunette and sparking a good-natured argument between the 5 high schoolers. In the midst of the discussion, though, Sakura suddenly stopped in her tracks and squinted off to the left. Hey, is that Kyoya-senpai? She's hallucinating again, Aiko told her sister, Junri, without even bothering to look over first. Aiko was promptly smacked by 3 different people, the one who didn't being Akahana. Ah, geez, sorry, but why would he be here of all places? No, it really is him, Akahana announced after squinting at him discerningly for a moment. Do you think that means the rest of the host club is here too? Her eyes darted around. No doubt she was hoping to catch sight of the twins, specifically Kaoru. Not that she would go up and talk to him, of course. She never had. But it was the thought that counted in this case. Why is he here? Sakura asked. And just then, a petite girl in a cute sundress with short brown hair walked up to him. Is he on a date? Why don't you spy on him and see? Amaririsu suggested with a grin. Oh, I am not getting involved in this, Junri immediately opted out. That guy's scary, Aiko agreed, both turning to leave. Guys, he's looking over here, Akahana hissed, the only one still focused on Kyoya enough to notice that the cool-type host had spotted them and was now gracing them with one of his kindest smiles. He's smiling! That's practically an invitation to come talk, Sakura also noted, although she grabbed a hold of Amaririsu and Akahana as she stepped forward because there was no way she was going to talk to him alone. He probably didn't recognize us, Junri said hopefully to Aiko, who nodded fervently in agreement. Yep, you guys have fun. I would rather jump in the alligator pit. Outski! Before the two could retreat even 2 steps, Kyoya's voice reached them, saying, Ah, Sakura, Amaririsu, Akahana, Junri and Aiko. It had actually taken Kyoya longer than he would care to admit to recognize the last two. Sakura, Amaririsu, and Akahana all appeared just as one may think an Oron student off-campus would. Designer jeans, presentable hair, a nice sundress that Kyoya was fairly certain came from the Hitachin line. On the other hand, the Hanuoruta siblings looked like mere commoners. Between Junri's baggy jacket, on this hot day no less, and Aiko's obviously hand-me-down ill-fitting jeans, not to mention the fact that Aiko's hair, which was usually up in such intricate hairstyles, was now hanging limply, in a style that was clearly barely brushed, much less anything else. Kyoya thought he hid his judgment quite nicely, if he did say so himself. It's quite a coincidence to see you all here. Junri and Aiko muttered under their breath, but luckily Sakura was more polite. Yeah, it is. So what are you doing here, Kyoya-senpai? If she was eyeing the back of the little brunette who had been talking to him a moment ago, only to wander a few feet away, it was a coincidence, and it had nothing to do with the question. He paused a moment, seeming to consider the question seriously, and then answered with a smile a bit more sarcastic than his usual. Family outing. Oh, us too, Akahana responded after they had all taken a moment to wonder what on earth he could have meant by that. No way the other Utoris had set foot in a place like this. Kyoya-senpai, the girl that had intrigued them began, turning to face the group that she hadn't noticed forming, and cut off when she saw that he had his hosting face on. Only afterwards did she notice the 5 looking at her with differing levels of shock. Aiko and Amaririsu seemed to be the least affected by the sudden appearance of Haruhi as a girl, while Akahana, the only one in the group who was a regular customer of hers, seemed to be the most. Hey, Haruhi sighed, glancing over at Kyoya. This was going to be troublesome. She just knew it. She didn't care if these 5 found out her secret, but if Kyoya raised her dead again or something because of this, it was going to be irritating. The 5 took the scene before them and silently came to their own conclusions. Haruhi, are you? The 5 started in unison. A girl? Finished 4. Cross-dressing? Aiko asked at the same time. There was a moment of awkward silence as the other 4 turned in disbelief, and Aiko looked like she wanted to sink into the ground in shame. Oh, yeah. That would make more sense, Aiko stumbled, and the other 4 gave her looks that clearly said they thought she was being an idiot. Hey, my question still applies. If there's a dress here and a boy's uniform at school, one of them is some kind of cross-dressing, Aiko defended herself feebly. You're mistaken. Kyoya stepped forward with the grace of a panther and the smile that made Aiko and Junri just as nervous. This is Haruhi's cousin. She's visiting, and we in the host club took it upon ourselves to show her around the area. Haruhi looked a little worried. She didn't much care if these guests figured out her secret, but Seeing as it was Kyoya, she wasn't about to go against anything he said for fear of the consequences. Even ignoring the fact that this rundown zoo is not an area that the host club would frequent, nor take a girl to impress her, that was an obvious lie. The five looked at each other for a moment, wondering if anyone was going to call the infamous third Hattori-san out, and just as most had come to the conclusion that it was best not to step on his toes, of course, one couldn't possibly resist the temptation. "Do you think we're idiots?" Aiko asked, nearly without thinking, and then, at the looks she was getting from the others, protested, "Okay, I was an idiot for like 2 seconds back there. What about right now?" Sakura hissed, the others nodding in agreement. Nice as he appeared in club, everyone knew not to get onto Kyoya's bad side. Come on, he won't do anything. Aiko faded off, as she seemed to realize that he very well could do many, many things. Well, time to go, Junri decided, grabbing Aiko by the hand and starting off in a random direction. Kyoya made no move to go after them, but when Mori suddenly appeared in front of their path, it was made clear why. Both sighed and slumped a little, the adorable grin Honey giving them just demoralizing them more. "I guess you're not going to let us escape?" Aiko asked, but didn't bother craning her neck up to see Mori shake his head. She knew he would anyway, so they trudged back to where Kyoya was pleasantly smiling. It looked more like a smirk, though.
"You look pretty with your hair down, Ai-chan. Don't you think, Takashi?"
Honey chirped as they walked. Mori let out a grunt of agreement. At least, that's what it seemed like. "Flattery will get you nowhere," Aiko muttered, but Honey grinned brighter, and even Mori's lip twitched up a bit because they could all hear the smile in her voice despite the protest.
"Ama-chan!"
Honey cheered, and somehow he seemed to be grinning the brightest he had all day as he hopped down from Mori's shoulders, skillfully not dropping his latest overpriced acquisition, a lollipop shaped like a monkey, and skipped over to Amiririsu.
"What's with these clothes?"
The clearly judgmental voices of the Hitachin twins spoke up suddenly from behind the Hanurota siblings.
"A baggy jacket.
Hikaru wrinkled his nose, picking at the excess fabric.
And your hair's a mess."
Kaoru frowned, squinting at the usually highly stylized red hair as if it had personally offended him. "Back off, Tweedles!" Aiko snapped, although grinning like she was enjoying herself, while she and Junri retreated behind Mori, who promptly gave the redheads a look that sent them searching for other prey.
You're no fun, Mori-senpai,"
they intoned in unison, turning back to the larger group with eyes rolling. There, they immediately caught sight of Haruhi, in her dress, in front of 5 host club guests.
"Look, you should dress more like Haruhi."
Hikaru immediately spouted off.
"Yeah, we made him dress up like this today. Isn't it funny?"
Kaoru agreed, laughing.
Even though he's such a manly man,"
they both finished.
"What?"
they asked, seeing the stares ranging from amused to vaguely annoyed directed them.
"They already know, guys."
Haruhi sighed. She was already getting a headache.
"They what?"
the twins demanded, immediately entering scary mode and, of course, menacing Aiko and Junri before anyone else. The understanding between the 3 redheads had made anything else impossible. "Calm down, you psychos. We won't tell anyone. And back off, dumb." Aiko snapped at Hikaru, who was getting a little too close with his looming over her sister, who, to her credit, was looking mildly confused more than anything else.
"You won't tell anyone, will you?"
Honey asked Amiririsu, somehow seeming to be actually asking rather than begging as he would with his puppy dog eyes if it were any other customer. Of course not, Amiririsu stated, and the others agreed.
"So, what's going to happen?"
Haruhi asked, too wary of the Shadow King to think he would let this go so easily.
"It's not my call,"
Kyoya said glibly, but the way he was smirking said otherwise.
"It's up to the king." "Speaking of, where is Tamaki?"
Haruhi questioned, kind of afraid that the idiot had somehow gotten himself abducted. The twins snickered, and suddenly those fears tripled.
"Where is he?"
Kyoya asked calmly, glasses flashing, and both twins immediately pointed. The entire group turned, and sure enough, there was Tamaki Suo, king of the host club and son of the chairman and ladies' man and so many other impressive things, locked in a cage with the howler monkeys.
What's up, inmates? This is the judge, Peishi, and I am here to tell you guys that despite all of the wonderful and amazing things you just heard in the Bone Scorch, which there are so many, it was a really tough choice this week. I just reread Cricket's submission, all 11 pages of it. So well done. Characters I love so much. If you don't pay for listen, I'll tell you guys what I do when there's a creator whose content I really want to see on the Patreon. You know, I go in, I pay $5 for 1 month, I access all the content, and then I wait till the next year to do it again. Like, you can do that, you know, you don't have to actually be subscribed all the time. But I'm saying it'll be worth it for this one of Cricket's. Not that it's not been worth it for other people's, but like, I just reread this one and I'm very excited about it. So, Cricket's submission, really, really good. Anyway, Bones' submission that you just heard, right? Just the best, the most fun, because, you know, as mentioned, it was a fic. It went over the limit, I believe, which is always delightful. And it was, I believe, the first Scorch where we were in there as characters to be made fun of endlessly. So that's a thing that is always exciting when it happens. And I would be thrilled to know if people can guess which character is which of us and which of us would pick which host and all of that jazz, because I think it's hilarious to play that kind of guessing game. There's a whole Scorch where the whole point of it was to do that guessing game. I think it'll be a very, very long time before that Scorch shows up in an episode. But in the meantime, content yourselves with this one, because it is a blast, a wild ride. You guys already heard it. You know. It was amazing. Bones is a great writer. Cricket's a great writer. This is the best prompt I have possibly ever given. That feels rude to other people. Anyway, check out Cricket's Embers on the Patreon. Enjoy this episode. All of the episodes are great. We're flawless people. The Cellblock Scorch is the best podcast that has ever existed. That's all I have to say. I'm having a great day. Anyway, I hope you all have a lovely time and enjoy listening to other Scorch episodes as well. Keep those fires burning, y'all.
So that's the Scorch. It was really fun to write, and if you've watched Oron, I hope you enjoyed the characterizations of my boys. It's a fun show. I would recommend it. Cross-dressing, rich idiots, found family, and a whole bunch of shenanigans. I don't have much to say about the Scorch specifically here, but of course the best part about writing your friends into a piece is guessing who's who. So the Spotify poll this week is, who's the idiot? And I would like you all to guess if the dumb one who thought that Haruhi was cross-dressing is Bones, Octo, Peishi, Cricket, or Lost. If you want to guess the rest of who everyone is in the comments, that would be fun, but the basis of it is that every friend group has an idiot, and I want to know who you think ours is. I promise none of us will be offended if you pick us. Some of us might be offended if you don't. I'm going to be putting the explanation as to who's who up as bonus content on the Patreon for our Sparks, so they'll get to know who everyone is. And next time I do an episode, which should be week 18, so 2 weeks from now, I'll tell you all who's the idiot at the end. But only the Sparks members will get the full explanation of the others in our bonus content on the Patreon. And the prompt I gave for week 17 was, the word count is almost full. And to be honest, I probably just did that because I had blasted through the word limit on this last Scorch,
and I didn't expect to win, so I threw that out there to see what would happen. See you guys in the next episode, and keep that fire burning. The Cellblock Scorch is a production of Stellacore, an independent group of nerds sharing their obsessions with the world. We can be reached at thestellacore@gmail.com, through comments on your podcast platform of choice, our Instagram, Stella_core, and at our YouTube, also called Stellacore. Feel free to check out our other productions on our YouTube channel or our cosplays on Instagram. If you would like to support our creative endeavors, you can give a one-time tip to the Ko-Fi of the writer of your favorite Scorches, or check out our Patreon, linked in the show notes. There, you can access the winning Scorches and episode transcripts for free, or sign up for Spark level support for $5 a month to gain access to all of the Scorch submissions.